Hi, and welcome to the Business Growth Journey with me, Nick Termini. Today, we're here with Mike Tiehen of the Tiehen Group. Mike, what's up, man?
Nick, thanks for having me. How are you?
The life is good, Mike. Well, we're excited to
Good,
have you on the
good.
show today to tell about your story. First, before we get rolling into that, Mike, how do we know each other?
Oh my gosh. What has it been, 20 years since we first met? Up
Yeah,
in Maryville, Missouri. I'll never forget. It's a week before senior year, right? Week before senior year starts,
I see where this
and
is
we're
going.
both up there, uh, at the same time a week before, to get our minds ready for our courses and the upcoming senior year. And I'm in a house and here's some guy across the street mowing a lawn in a beater lawnmower, drinking a Miller Lite, and howdy doody neighbor. Like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
who's
Ned
this
Flanders
guy?
style, man. Absolutely.
We don't need to bore everybody with the
Uh,
details, but
well,
immediately the neighborly love was there, and yeah, it's been a fun journey ever since knowing you.
oh, man. So, Mike, I guess, would you recommend a three-wheeler golf cart to a college kid?
Yeah, I think you and your beater lawnmower inspired me to buy that $300 golf cart that had three wheels.
$100 a
And
wheel, baby.
it was senior year, right? After all, the senior year, it was like, you know what? This seems like the right purchase at the right time. And
Yeah.
I think it got its value. It's got its use. So, yeah, that was fun,
So Mike, fast forwarding, I guess a couple months from our last hurrah together in Maryville,
right?
what'd you get into? What did the grown up professional world lead you to right out of the gate?
Yeah. So, I went to school and I played sports and I didn't know what I wanted to do right away. I kind of had an idea. My family's been in real estate for a while. So that's
Yep.
always been something I was interested in, but there's not like a real estate, Northwest wasn't offering any specific real estate courses. And I don't know, I was told, go with what you like. So I actually started with a geography degree, like taking courses there,
Really?
just because I've always been interested in maps and,
Yep.
different parts of the world and whatever. It was just an interesting thing. But then somebody said, you realize like you basically either are going to become a teacher or like a map maker with this degree. And I'm like, nah, that's not my calling. So I ended up switching midway through. I get a business marketing degree with a minor in geography.
Mhm.
Anyway, that was what I graduated with. However, I did end up going into real estate right off the bat. So a good friend of mine, Pat Jordan, who lives in Maryville, played sports with me. His wife was working in Kansas City. She was a year ahead, and she had landed a job at Pulte Homes,
Okay.
which was at the time the nation's largest home builder. KC was one of their markets, and yeah, she had really great things to say, and essentially a great company. They had excellent training, and anyway, what really attracted me, to be honest, was she was making really good money a year out of
Yeah.
college, and I was like, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So anyway, she gets me an interview with the VP of sales,
Mhm.
and they were gonna first take an internship. So they were gonna select out of like 50 people, they were gonna take like 4 interns. And so
Okay.
I was really interviewing for a summer internship right out of college,
Got it.
and I was able to get it. Um, During the internship is where I learned so much. That summer I probably learned more in that summer than I've learned my whole career.
Yeah.
Working with the construction side, working with the sales side, the customer service side, actually working with buyers and customers. I
Yeah.
got my real estate license. And then out of the internship class, they were going to hire, I think, 2 people.
Mhm.
And so we all kind of knew it was a very competitive class of 5 or 6 of us. And we all were friends throughout the end of the summer. But at the end of the day, they were only going to hire 2 of us. Well, our class was so good, they ended up hiring 4 out of the 5 of us to come on, and I was one of them. And so, yeah, I basically worked. I went from an intern to an actual sales consultant for Pulte,
Mhm.
and jumped in. They placed me at a community called Kinsley Forest up at north of the river.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I worked there, and then they switched me out to Lenexa to a new community. But I mean, it was amazing. I was you know learning how to deal with buyers and kind of perfecting the
Yeah.
sales pitch and selling the Pulte brand. Yeah, it was great. That was awesome. Yeah, I mean, fast forward, that lasted 2 years. My dad, meanwhile, my dad started his real estate company back in the late 70s,
Okay.
doing family small companies, doing brokerage, property management,
Hmm.
and kind of a little bit of development. He kind of heavily started shifting into property management when I was a kid because of different things going on with the brokerage market back in the day.
Yeah.
The 80s was a rough period, according to many, when interest rates soared and capital
Yep.
gains tax went away. Anyway, I kind of knew ultimately I wanted to end up working as a broker for him. And
Hmm.
this experience, I think, is what I was hoping to get before I went over there, because I knew nobody was going to train me. I had to train myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I joined him 2 years after
Wait,
Pulte.
backing up real quick. So at Pulte Homes, were you part of the construction team at all too? Like, did you have any input or any construction management as part of that? You mentioned in your internship you touched on all levels, but when you were there,
Yeah, great question. No, I think no, technically no, but during the internship, I had to
yeah,
spend 2 weeks with construction crews and
yeah,
learning the building process. They put you through, I mean, you take a test at the end with, you got to know how to name the different parts of the home, from the sill plate to the trusses and the
yeah,
different components, the drain tiles. So I learned a ton. And then you go around during the day with those guys, and they're pouring foundations, and they're, framing homes and pouring concrete. And so I just learned all that. And then, but it was very interesting to me too. Like, I think a lot of salespeople were just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But
yeah,
I,
yeah.
yeah, I use that as like my main selling point, is the quality of the construction, and,
Yes.
using that to kind of, and not every buyer cares, but a lot of them do. And especially the ones that I knew were starting to ask construction questions, I'm like, I got this one. So
Yeah. And
yeah, that was it.
were there any accreditations or credentials that you got during that time?
No, I mean, there was the internal Pulte, badge,
Yeah.
construction badge, stuff like that, but nothing, no industry, I don't think I did it long enough to get any industry accreditation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of know where the story goes, right? Where you're going to be getting into more construction and development and
Yeah.
a lot of different bigger type projects. And I think, your interest right out of the gate in how does this work? What is this like? And being able to communicate, the construction part, all the technical information, the like
Uh,
everything that goes into it. It sounds like you picked up on that pretty early, and it
yeah.
kind of set the stage for what you're about to talk about, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely still doing that work today. So absolutely, I fall back on that early training. I mean, I've continued to learn so much more since then.
Yeah.
So it's a continual journey, the learning side of things.
But
But
never.
yeah, my journey within the Tiehen Group, which I've now been here for 20 years.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Yeah, like, I kind of started in sales. I went over and joined my dad, and he was converting apartments to condominiums, and I was selling them for him, and
Yep.
uh, doing a good job. And then what happened at the 2007 2008 time period hit, and
Yeah.
mortgages. Everybody knows that story.
That's when I
So
bought my first house on the front side, not on the back side.
yeah, yeah, you probably didn't even have to like show your ID to get that loan, right? I
No.
think that's what happened. Oh, on the backside. Oh yeah, I mean, sales was slowing down, and I basically said, "Hey, Dad, I know you got these managers and these properties," and he was losing a manager and trying to hire, and I just said, "How much does it pay, and what do I got to do?" And management is not hard, but I
Yeah.
didn't know what I didn't know, and I ended up getting into property management. Before I knew it, I was managing 12 different neighborhoods and communities, condominiums, working with boards. It's just a different beast. It was something I learned a lot doing. I also learned that I didn't want to do that the rest of my life.
Hey, that's huge. And these are big lessons to learn.
I
What's
know, right?
What you don't
I got to learn the hard way. That's how I learn anyway. But
say. So wait, how many doors were you managing at that time?
so it wasn't so much a doors thing because we were managing HOAs or condominium associations, and
Okay.
you're dealing with like a board of volunteer homeowners that kind of make the decisions, and we're there to guide them and manage the property. And so you go to these nightly meetings once a month, and you hear all sorts of stuff, all sorts of grievances. I mean, again, these are just volunteer homeowners that
Airing
are,
of the grievances.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that sounds
It's
incredible.
so I learned a lot, and I did meet some great people. I mean, if you think about some of these high end condos, a lot of these guys are retired CEOs, CFOs. You
Yeah.
know, they're just volunteering because they live there and
Yep.
they want to make sure the money's being handled correctly and place is being taken care of. So I got to meet a lot of people, made connections, and I did learn a lot from doing
Yeah.
that. My dad ended up 5 years ago making the decision. You know, he asked, he said, "Are you interested in continuing with the HOA business?" I said, "No." I said, "We got this portfolio of apartments." I go, "I'd like to still be a property manager, but I'm more interested in managing commercial properties and multifamily properties and, you know, kind of dealing with one owner versus a collective group of people that change every year, establish relationships and so that's kind of the shift that's happened over the last 5 years with me is we've sold off a big chunk of the company as my dad is slowly phased out of working. He still is working part-time today, but essentially we sold that off and kind of shrunk as a company. And in the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been transitioning into kind of running the business and
Yeah.
trying to establish it as, you know, what it's always been, a family business, but doing it my way and starting from scratch in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
that's brought me to today where we still manage properties, a lot of multifamily. We
Mhm.
still have a brokerage division where we do sales and leasing. And
Yep.
then we do have a maintenance and renovation part of the company that I'm still very involved in. I love that side of it. And we've got great people working in them.
So when you joined the Tiehen Group and started working with your dad, what was that like going from working with Pulte Homes to then working with your dad?
I mean, in a lot of ways, it was fabulous. It was so great. I mean,
Yeah.
I was working with my
He's
dad
incredible.
who,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, you know, my dad over the years, he's had people working for him forever. So I knew a lot of these people from growing up. And
Mhm.
so I'll never forget my first week or two working with my dad. You know, we're so small, he's so small and busy, and I didn't even have an office. I didn't even actually have a desk for the first
Yep.
2 weeks. So we literally flipped over a cardboard box. They set a computer on it and threw me a chair. And I was just in the corner of the office working for like the first 2 weeks until finally I think they got me a real desk. And I don't know, I
That's-
think I got a cubicle or something there for a minute, which I felt pretty big after that. No, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, working with my dad, I mean, everybody had, you know, people that work with family, I think all probably understand there's pros and cons. But my dad's always been so good about keeping work, work and family, family. And so that made it a lot more enjoyable knowing, you know, we don't have to leave work and deal with the stresses of work, you know, when we're with our families. So,
Yeah. So where would you say, from the time, the TN Group, that you've grown the most, right? Like yeah, I've had a chance for a front row seat with you to see all the kind of projects you're doing, or some of them. And I mean, these are large scale projects that, are very complex. And so
right.
there's a lot of, I guess you could say, analytics that go into it.
Yeah.
So where have you grown in that space? Because that's definitely an industry where it's a lot to take on, and you've got to learn through time. Like what's that path been like for you?
Yeah, I think, you know, my dad's always kind of instilled in me just, you know, work hard, do the right thing, you know, learn. And so I've always had the mentality. And so if I haven't known, if I don't know something, I feel like I've been able to, you know, either have him as a resource to go to, which has been phenomenal, or he'll know somebody I could talk to, go to lunch with this guy, or here's a book to read, you know. So I've always kind of just tried to learn something I don't know or don't understand, but it interests me. And
Yeah.
so that has been huge, just kind of learning the ropes. And like I said earlier, like I have made lots of mistakes. I mean, so sometimes I don't know the answer, I don't know what to do, and you just got
Yep.
to go with your gut. and you might have it wrong, but chalk it up as a learning lesson, right? And so just through trial and error and through, educating myself and talking to people, it's kind of how I've learned a lot of this
Yeah.
to what we're doing. And at the end of the day, a lot of it isn't as complex as some people say. I know terms get thrown out in real estate that people get their head in a mess about, but it's, at the end of the day, it's pretty simple stuff. And that's, for me, I like to simplify things as much as I can. I want to be able to explain to my kids, here's how this works, here's what I do, and so in order to do that, I kind of have to break it down as if I'm a kid. So
Yeah.
that's what I try and do anyway.
Okay, so you brought up your kids. Where in the journey did your kids come along? What has having kids taught you to grow as a business person, as a leader, as a manager? Because I know for myself, like I've learned I really have to slow down and, just like you said, be able to break things down and simplify them. And it's helped me tremendously to be able to learn to do that on a way
Yeah,
better level, because that's one area I want to continue to grow. But as I've grown as a leader and manager, I've seen, like, man, this is all connected. Like, what's it
right.
been like for you since having kids and the growth you've had in business as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that that's, as you know, like the biggest turning point in our lives, right? I mean,
Huge.
it's like your responsibility now is off the charts, and you got somebody else you really got to care for, and it's hard to
Yeah.
explain, but any parent understands what I'm talking about. And yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, my wife, amazing wife, is luckily she's so good that I get to go to work and not have to worry all day long about what's going on with the kids or who's watching them and all the things. So that's been huge. But yeah, at the end of the day, having the kids is like, I think what drives me, it's really added to my motivation. Like it's an easy motivator to wake up and say, you know what, not only do we have bills to pay, so I need to work, but I also get to remind myself a lot of, like, what example do I want to set for the kids?
Mhm.
To me, it's not that they see what I'm doing when I'm gone, but I just want them to know, like, the best way to teach somebody is learn through actions. Like, let actions speak louder than words. So I want to work every day so they understand, you know, this is how dad did it. This is
Yeah.
how you do it. And I'm lucky because my dad essentially did that with me. And so
Mhm.
I had a great example. I feel like, to be able to show my kids, and I'm doing it my way, obviously, but I think the fundamentals are what I saw growing up with my dad, and I'm using a lot of that today.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. I mean, I have a unique perspective here, because I remember when we were talking about Maryville to now, and I mean, it's crazy the incremental growth that you got to have. But then, like you said, you become more and more aware of, like, here's who I want to be a great
Yeah.
role model, parent, and just do the right thing. So it helps you grow essentially too.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's really hard to, like, explain it to somebody that doesn't have kids, and
Yeah.
but yeah, if
Uh,
you know it, you know it, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I remember when my first couple buddies had kids and they're explaining stuff to me, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
most things in life, right? Until you own your own
Yeah.
company and you have different responsibilities, you don't understand what it's like to walk in those shoes, and being able to, you can imagine all you want until you do it. I remember when I was in the corporate world and I was talking about how this guy I was working with needed to do this, needed to do that, and then this can you know upper management in the company I was at was like, "Well, have you ever done it?" I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh." He's like, "Well, how the hell do you know?" And I'm like, "Ooh."
Yeah.
And the more I've done, the more that resonates and makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And, like, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but, like, I feel like when you wake up, and we all have the days where we don't want to do something, and we could easily come up with an excuse not to show up,
Oh,
not to do
excuses
it.
are everywhere, man. You don't even
Yeah.
have to look. You just grab them. They're out there.
But if you constantly remember, like, what would I want my kids to see? What would I want my kids to do?
Yep.
Do I want to go talk at this, give a presentation to this group? I mean, no, I hate doing those things. But you know what?
Yeah.
Like, it's really easy to overcome fear and overcome procrastination, I think, sometimes when you just have that perspective.
It's a growth mindset. I mean, knowing that. I mean, I know you're a big podcast guy and a natural learner. I mean, it's just ongoing.
Right. Right.
So when you now are able to look back and reflect on, your career and getting into, real estate, construction, property management, all the things real estate, right? Like what's the most fun for you? Like what's the juice of it? What's the rush of it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of have a mission here. Like our mission at the company is really simple, but it's just we want to have a positive impact on our employees, our clients, our community. And
Yep.
so that's very broad, but it's so again so simple. Like to have that impact, right? Like I want to provide a company where I can pay people fair or above fair wages, and they have a room for growth, and they have support.
Yep.
um, Clients, I want them to realize when they hire us, they're going to get a hard grouping work of people that was dedicated to achieving their goals and providing a high level of service. And then when you do those first two things, then you try and get yourself in a position financially to where you can give back time or money. And
Yep.
I'm not anywhere near where I'd like to be with that, but we always make a point every year to try and give back and do volunteer things. And, it doesn't even have to be a volunteer charity. It can be just simply doing something in your neighborhood, helping out your neighbor, like anything. But that mentality is kind of, the mentality we take. And I try and hire people that are like-minded, that agree with that. I mean, we put our mission statement on our job ads. We put it on the
Yeah.
job offers. I mean, it's all over the place. So
Yeah.
it's real simple, but that's kind of what we do and how I kind of,
Developing people and doing the right thing. I mean, you walk
yeah,
it and talk it, man. It's awesome.
yep,
It's true. I've been able to see you do it in action. So 100% agree. Very cool.
yep,
On on like a say we're looking at a big construction project, right? Does the vision of putting together architecture plans or the demo or going in and seeing the like everything come together or the finished product, like what in it for you is kind of the fun part? I mean, generally it's
yeah.
the finished product, but the journey of it, because I've seen how you can like dive in and you're very into all of it.
I know, which is not always a good thing. It's hard
No,
to
I
know
hear
where
you.
to put your time sometimes, but
Yep.
no, you're right. Like if I'm being like personally, what I really enjoy is adding the value, right? So I do kind of consider myself somewhat creative when it comes to, how do we add the value? I love problem solving. I love coming in and saying, how do we take this property and add the value so we can get the numbers to work and get the rents where they need to be or whatever it might be. And so yeah, I do love that part. I love project work too. So I like kind of a start and an end date. The end date is never really where you think it's going to be. But I do love that. I think that's a part of my job I really like. I mean, I get excited about finding deals for people, on the brokerage side that you were part of. I mean,
Yep.
the excitement that goes into that, the disappointment that goes into that, but like it's a big swing, right? I mean,
Huge.
things can be going all hunky dory until the very end, and then something falls apart, and 2 months of work is down the drain.
Two
But
months, 2 years, whatever the timeline.
yeah, 2 years, whatever. Yeah, so it's hard. But like when you do see something through and you're rewarded, whether that's financially or your client giving you a pat on the back or whatever, like those are the things I think that I really enjoy. I also like seeing my employees grown to kind of like, I really like to see them succeed too. So just like seeing enjoyment out of them or seeing them do something good or get a pat on the back, whether it's from me or somebody else, I think I love that piece of it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are I know about some of the cool projects you've worked on, but what are some of like you mentioned you like interesting creative projects. What is there any you'd like to share about that are a little more outside the box thinking where you had to find a way to kind of learn as you were going or just thought, hey, this would be cool. This is like a different type of concept that you've already done. Is that something you could talk about?
Yeah, I mean, we do try and stick to our bread and butter with the multifamily
Yep.
assets. And so there's some like very basic staple things that go into how you can create value. I think the devil's always in the details on how you take it to the next level, how you differentiate your project from another one and how you provide value. So I do enjoy that and looking at unique new things we can do or what other markets have done. So I guess that's not really like super creative from like an asset point. I mean, you're familiar with the guest ranch, kind of the outlier from everything else we do,
Yeah, yes, I am.
but that one was very interesting. I mean, that I don't even know if I fully understand how that's kind of changed me or shaped me yet, because it's still ongoing. I mean, we're
Yeah,
5 years into it, but
yep.
to go from, I guess, to go out to a place. I went out there with my family and my friends to
Wait,
camp.
could you give a little more background info on just where it is, what it is, that kind of
Oh
stuff?
yeah, yeah. Sorry. So out in Colorado, I have some family that lives out there, and there's a place up by Winter Park. We grew up camping. We like the outdoors. And now that we have kids, we're trying to continue that.
Yep.
Anyway, my brother had gone to this place, this guest ranch that has teepees and glamping tents and cabins and camping and a beautiful space. He came back talking about it at one of our family get-togethers in KC, and said,
Hmm.
"You guys got to come out." So fast forward to the next summer, we're out there with them and several friends and just camping, just having a weekend off and having a good time. The kids are having a blast, and
Yeah.
but my mind, I kind of have a mind that doesn't stop. So while I'm out there, I'm like, this place is great, but gosh, it could be so much better. There's like 5 cabins that are falling down, like literally falling down, like the roof's caved in, and they don't even like, I don't like, that could be a cabin somebody stays in, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And I came to learn. We ran into the owner who operated the thing that weekend, and you got to understand why it was like that. Essentially, he was just a mom and pop, small, teeny tiny operation. He inherited the place from his dad. A lot of the problems that were still there when we were there was stuff and he inherited. So he
Yeah.
literally just he took it as a labor of love to take this thing that he grew up at this place, right? And he just said, "Hey, I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to try and make some money in the summer, and I'm going to put it right back. And next year I'll fix up this thing, and the next year I'll try and do this." And that conversation turned into realizing how tired he was, and how he was just like, to be honest, I think he's got kids. We're thinking about selling this thing.
Yeah.
And so that little, and that's funny, because it's just funny how little conversations can turn into
Yeah.
big things, which
Huge.
is always why I talk to everybody, right? Talk to the grocery store bagger, talk to everybody you can talk to, because you just never know what information you're going to gather. Side bit, but yes, that led to hey, give me your number. I'm in real estate. Maybe we can talk. And the whole ride back, I just thought about it. Whole drive, 10-hour drive to KC. Thought about it. I was like, I mean, this is a pipe dream, right? But
That that's where it starts, man. It may seem like it in the beginning, right? Now look at it.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, uh, I get back, and a couple months later, my main investor, who does a lot of KC work, said he just raised a new fund, and we're trying to put it to work. And they just said, we're open. We need to get creative. We need to find deals. So I put together a little PowerPoint of this place and said, here's what I think you could do. And I sent it to him, and he immediately liked it.
Yeah.
And yeah, fast forward another 8 months and due diligence and all that fun stuff. We ended up closing on it. And yeah, it's been quite a journey. I mean, it's funny. We're 4 years in. I think we're on year 4, and we're finally at a point where we're running stabilized operations, and
Yeah.
this thing's gonna hopefully do really well this year. But there's a lot of different levers going on with the economy and different things, so I'm always
Yeah.
nervous about it. But yeah, we've given it our all. I can say that we've definitely put a ton of time and energy and love and all that good stuff into this one. So it's been fun.
What's cool about it is you took all the principles that you're doing with multifamily, right?
Yep.
And were able to apply them in a totally different creative space. And that also intersected with your passion. So, like you're talking about, you grew up camping, you and your wife did, and being able to pass that kind of fun and passion on to your kids, but also I'm guessing it's bigger than that, right? Like your family. And what along the ride in taking that project on to where you are now have you grown the most and seen like the biggest aha moments?
Yeah, I mean, oh man, there's been so many. I just, again, like, I think I've just always, I really enjoy learning. And so unfortunately, it sometimes comes at an expense, right? Because I don't always get it right, but I always try not to make the same mistake again and learn. And so, this one was a tough one at the beginning because as we closed, we entered into COVID and, labor was hard, supplies to do the construction side of the project ended up being just a lot more challenging, especially trying to do it remote from KC and going out there. So I learned a lot about, maybe building in a little bit more of a cushion and, giving yourself a little more leeway. I think we were, I might have been kind of aggressive with, how quickly we could get things done and the cost.
Yeah.
And so I've always tried to learn from that and then carry that on to the next project. And, I think, that to me is probably the number one thing is just really learning that you gotta build in time for things you don't expect and as much as you can, and, that sometimes known as a contingency. But yeah, I would say, that and then just the challenge of trying to run an operation remotely, it meant I really had to get good with our technology and doing
Yeah.
Teams meetings and just making sure our business was upgraded to be able to support that and have the support from here. But I will say it's, to me, I never thought about managing a property that wasn't a local property, but it's
Yeah.
very doable, right? I mean, and so I think if anything, I feel like, our company has learned how to handle managing properties now anywhere, although we don't, but it
Yeah.
just makes me more comfortable knowing, hey, we can take something on that's outside of our wheelhouse and make it work and, take lessons we learned to make sure it's successful.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great lesson learned of being able to see beyond local ownership or management to where you've been able to grow and build the systems to handle that. And so in doing that, what are some of the things that helped you aside from technology? Was it getting the right people? Was it creating some kind of rhythm? What was it that you finally hit a point where you're like, okay, I think I feel good about this?
100% people. I mean, that kind of goes back. I mean, our business, whether it's hospitality or, apartments or commercial, maintenance, renovation. I mean, the world is changing right now with technology and AI, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you still have to have a human being go fix a furnace, and you still
Yeah.
have to have,
As
you
of
know,
right now.
yeah, right, exactly. As of now. So, it's still a very people heavy industry, and I don't see that changing. I see the technology, the software support, maybe some of the scheduling, the AI stuff helping us, but it's still a people business. I mean, if there's a leak at your building, somebody's got to go fix it. If you got to dig a hole, I can't call an AI robot to come dig the hole. I got to call a person. I got to call a company.
Yep.
So anyway, to me, it's always like we're only as good as our people we hire. Getting that right, I would say, has been maybe one of my biggest challenges over the years is just learning how to hire right and not make mistakes hiring because of the setbacks it creates when you get it wrong
Oh
and how you
yeah.
have to start over.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, we've implemented some things with personality tests like the cultural index, and we always check references. We kind of do all the ABCs, but even then, you sometimes get it wrong, and it just never fails. So I try not to get discouraged about it. I just think at the end of the day, you go with your gut most of the time, and you know that to me though means that I like being involved in the hiring of every person all the way down to our housekeeping staff. It doesn't matter. I want to know everyone working here. And I want to talk to them, and they need to understand what we're all about. And it's
Yeah.
just got to be a good fit. So
Yeah.
I'd say, yeah, people is number one for sure.
So that brings up a great segue here, Mike. So you look back to when you started, you're learning real estate, you're learning construction, property management, HOAs, all the things when you joined the Tiehen Group, working with your dad, and then now we're talking about hiring, building the teams. Like, what has that process been like for you? Being able to grow into a manager, leader, owner, versus being the one that's the doer. Like, what has that process been like in learning to lead and people in a company, people
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just kind of knowing when to kind of give up the control and we're so small that we've always been involved in almost every aspect, but
Yeah,
that's not an efficient use of time. And I think I've kind of learned through these personality tests that we do for people we hire, plus we've done them ourselves, is just kind of what people's strengths and weaknesses are, including myself, and just kind of being honest with that, and understanding that, I'm not the best person when it comes to finances or, say, structured operations, right? At the same time, if I can focus my time on business development and relationships and projects, and I find that when I put myself in positions where I know I'm strong, that usually leads to good things. And when I spend time on things I'm not very good at, it's a real drag, and I'm not that good at it. So people along the way, whether it's been my dad, my brother Dave worked for us for a while, who is kind of different than me in the sense that he's a military operation, military intelligence guy who came in and, made a huge impact on our company 5 years ago when he came in and updated all of our technologies and softwares, and he did SOPs for every
Yeah.
part of the business, and, made us actually write out a strategic business plan, which we've never done, so
Yep.
having a roadmap, and I know that's part of what you do, Nick, and
Yep.
as you know how important that is. I mean, otherwise you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants, which is what I've done a lot.
Oh yeah.
So, I'd just say that has been a huge piece for me, realizing that, hey, if I got to make adjustments to SOPs or strategic business plans, or, I'm not the controller finance person in the company. I need somebody really strong
Mhm.
to complement me there. I understand numbers to the extent I need to,
Yeah.
but I don't get into the details. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is just finding the people that, can supplement what I'm not good at, and just making sure everybody too is in a position of strength. That Strength Finders book is interesting, but they're all
Yeah.
about, hey, forget your weaknesses, focus on your strengths, which I don't know if I'm 100% on board with, but I think it makes sense to the extent that if you're doing something really well and you're good at it, and you're going to enjoy it more
Yeah.
than struggling to figure out how to do something that you just can't, you just hate doing, or, it's just coming unnatural. And
Yep.
so I just found too, like, I think if you do that, people are generally a little bit more happy, with their.
Yes. Yes, they are. I mean, if they can do things that they like to do in one of spaces they want to grow in, they're gonna, and they know exactly what's expected. They're gonna a lot of times thrive. But if they're doing stuff they can't stand, and they don't even know what's expected, that's kind of tough sledding
I tell you, man, yeah.
for
I mean, I
everybody.
know firsthand, yeah, yeah. So I believe in it. I do think there's something to be said for trying to work on certain weaknesses, but you got to pick and choose where you spend your time.
So, Mike, you come from, with your dad being an entrepreneur, you being an entrepreneur, it's in the genes, right? So, was there in college, or even before joining Pulte Homes, were there any entrepreneurial endeavors when you were younger that you just kind of got in and tried it out?
Yeah, I think now that I'm an adult and I'm looking back, I don't think I appreciated it at the time. In fact, I probably complained a lot about it. But my dad was always on us. I mean, early, he was very like, there's a constant message of, you can do whatever you put your mind to. He was always interested in watching things like the Olympics or the NBA finals, or the college basketball tournament, things that it's like the greatest, like people that have are doing great things, and like, hey, he loved the stories about people that came from nothing, or the underdog or whatever. And so he was always, that was always just kind of on, and you didn't know it at the time what you were watching, and like, whatever, dad, and but like, that stuff's still in the back somewhere that I remember. And then you start playing sports, and hey, if you want to, you're not natural born talent like so and so, or you're not this, so what you got to do is work a little extra harder, right? And so again, you don't like hearing it, but it's the truth. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
if you want to be good and do something worthwhile, like, work hard, essentially. So work hard was always in the message. um and then we hit, I think it might have been fifth grade, he said, let's go, you should be mowing lawns, or like, hey, it's time for you to start earning some money. And okay, fine. So, and this is where I think I didn't realize at the time, but he, look, I'll buy a lawnmower. You're going to mow lawns this summer, and you're going to pay me back, when you're done, but I'm going to front it for you, get you started.
Yep.
And, you don't know at the time, but you're kind of, that's kind of how it works, right? Like,
That's
I want
it.
to buy a house. I'm going to loan you money, bank, and then I'm going to pay you back over time. And, but it gets you going, it gets you started.
What kind of mower did you start out with?
I believe it was a 21-inch Toro,
Oh, yeah.
no self-propel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was a little guy like this pushing a mower, and my first account was my dad's friend who lived behind us, Joe Saladuccia, who I think paid us $7. Me and my brother $7 to split to mow his lawn that took us half a day. What a guy, man! The guy was like, we were getting the blades stuck on tree roots, and we were messing his lawn up, I think, more than making it look good. So he had the patience to deal with us and help us, and yeah,
Man,
but
when
yeah.
so I cut grass in high school, probably middle school, high school, and college. And I remember my neighbor across the street. We actually talked about this like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he's like, "So are you weed eating now?" Because what we would do is I'm a big picture thinker, and my buddy that worked with me is very analytical, detailed mind.
Yeah.
And so the days that I would do the weed eating, he'd walk us around the house. Like he's like, no, no more, no more. You do the weed eating because you're very attentive to detail. He's like, I want to show you guys what Nick did with the weed eater. And he's going around his house showing her I knocked all the paint and the wood off, and messed up the gutters and knocked off some stuff. I'm like, all right, do it anyway. And so he's like, you mow, Joel, you weed eat. No more switching. And
yeah, you got to have that.
Oh, 100%, man. I mean, it's funny though, because from early ages, you can see who's going to be the big picture thinkers and who are
Yeah.
the more analytical minds. And right out of the gate, I was diagnosed as don't touch that weed eater.
Yeah, I know. It's funny what you like, as you know, the lawn business is such a funny thing. Like I even today sometimes think about how great that time was. It's such a simple job, but yeah, yet it's just like you do one thing and it's done and you get paid and then you move on. And so obviously there's a lot that goes into it when you grow, and we got it pretty big at one point by high school. But those early years were interesting. My dad was always good. He always taught us to have manners. But one thing he like stuck in our heads very early was, when you meet somebody, you shake their hand, you look them in the eye, right? And you say
Yep.
hello and you introduce yourself. And, it's an uncomfortable thing for most people, for kids too. I mean, it's not, doesn't come natural for everybody. But once you get it down, now all of a sudden, how do we get this to grow? Go knock on somebody's door, shake their hand, introduce yourself. And that alone probably landed us 50%, of our jobs. You leave flyers on the other houses, who knows if they're going to call you. But I think just the fact that you see a young kid coming to your door. I mean, I think if a fifth grade kid came to my door and shook my hand today and said, I would like to mow your lawn. I'm just trying to make money for school or whatever. And, was straightforward. I'd probably say, you know what, fine, you can do it. Right. Because I just feel like that's an invaluable lesson, and it teaches you sales, customer service, people skills that you'll have for the rest of your life.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Was it just you? Was it your brothers? Was it a team? And how many yards did you get up to?
My brother Andy's just a year below me, so it's like it was always kind of me and him. Unfortunately for my brother Dave, who's 4 years below me, he did join us, but it's just the little brother dynamics, and so he worked for us, but it kind of was Andy and I's gig, and calling the shots and collecting the money, and we eventually got to a point where we're doing our own deposits at the bank and buying our
Yeah.
own, equipment, our trucks. Yeah, we got up to a point, I don't know, maybe 40 residential lawns, and then like 3 or 4 big commercial ones that would take half the week just on the commercials. So, we mowed a gas station where they didn't pay us, except they let us fill up gas for free. So we literally mow this thing in 10 minutes. Then, and this was when gas was like 80 cents, but we'd fill up both mowers, the whole truck, all these cans. They didn't care how much we used. So we would just fill it up once a week. We're like, this is our best account. But, those are the days that you just, you kind of remember, like, and my brother Andy, like going back to what you said, you find out what you're good at and what you're not. I was pretty good at the mowing trimming side, and he was good at it too, but he was very good with the books. And so he was assigned, handwriting the invoices, keeping tallies of who's paid, who's not paid, doing the deposits,
Oh, wow.
paying out. And shoot, by high school, I mean, I was employing a couple of my buddies along with my brothers, and Yeah, it was a fun thing. I mean, people, we worked when a lot of people weren't working, so that was not always fun. But I'll never forget, like one of my accounts was my best friend Steve's house, who lived in Hallbrook and had a big mansion, and they had a big pool out, and once a week we'd have to go mow the lawn, and more often than not, there was a party going on in the backyard with a bunch of high school kids, and here we are mowing the lawn while they're drinking and or having fun. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I was so jealous at the time. But looking back, I got to give all the credit to my dad. I mean, we wouldn't have been doing that if he wouldn't have started us at such a young age. And yeah, that was a huge learning lesson for me.
So going from the 21-inch push Toro to what kind of, did you have a fleet of
You want to
riding?
you want to get in you want to get into the
No, dude,
details.
I'm curious. Like this is the beginning of the roots of learning who does what, who collects
Right.
money, how do you do it, right? Like think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also I have a big extended family, so I had a cousin, the Mark Schlegel, a couple years older than me, and they also had a lawn business. So, and Mark has always been a mentor to me. He's like 4 years older, and played sports. He just really a smart guy, funny too. I've always just enjoyed being around him. But he was I don't know why he kind of took me under his wing, but he taught me so much. Like he's the guy that taught me how to drive a stick shift. He taught me how to sharpen mower blades. He told me how to find good deals on mower. I mean, he taught me so many little tips and tricks about the mowing game that I would have otherwise probably never figured out or, learned the hard way. And I mean, but we worked our way up to, buying, I think it was two of the big walk behinds, and then we eventually had the big Tiger Skag with the zero turn sit down, so we thought we were pretty big, and
Oh
had
yeah,
the
man.
trailers, and had the grinding machine, come home and you're grinding the blades, sharpening the blades every week. And yeah, it was a time. It was fun. But yeah, we got it pretty big. I can't remember what we were doing money wise, but it was at our age, we were very happy with the income we were receiving.
So you covered sales, operations, finance. What else? Any marketing in there? Did you hand out flyers? Get
We did,
referrals?
yeah. We were always handing out flyers, and yeah, we put our company. We got a magnet for the side of the truck. Put
Oh
our
yeah,
number out there. So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Nothing too crazy, but yeah, we were happy to take on more, and yeah, we had a good time.
That's awesome stuff, man. So looking back at Tiehen Group where you are now, if somebody wanted to work with you and your team, what kind of things would they work with you on? You mentioned brokerage, you mentioned property management, multifamily, some construction, but when would somebody engage for the Tiehen Group and who's a good fit to work with you guys?
In terms of employees or clients?
Clients. So if
Yeah.
like a prospect is, who is it that you guys would attract?
So I tell people all the time, I think that a unique differentiator about maybe we have maybe over some of the other bigger brokerage companies is that, we are in it. Like we're property managers. So, when we're talking about like a multifamily asset, um, we can look at a building and pretty quickly tell you what the rent should be, what the expenses should be, how much the reno is going to cost. A lot of these guys, a lot of these
Reno means,
renovation. Yeah. Yeah.
yep.
So a lot of investors, they're good on paper and they can write out assumptions and underwrite and say, yeah, this is a great deal. But to get down to it of like, all right, are these numbers real? I think is one of the value components we bring. So I just tell people, look, if whether you're looking to buy or sell real estate, I feel like we can come in and help you. We have a great brokerage department, good marketing. We can do it as good as anybody.
So somebody that's going to buy or sell real estate of what scale? It could be a condo, a 200 unit apartment complex, a strip mall. What is it?
Yep, that's a good question. Yeah. So to clarify, we're not doing residential homes, condos. We don't deal with that. I have a cousin, and so people call me and sometimes ask. Hey, you're better off with my cousin over here at Better Homes and Gardens, right?
Mhm.
But when it comes to commercial properties, multifamily properties, land, we're pretty good, I think, at taking a look at that and whether you're selling, bringing in a good marketing package and a plan for selling. At the end of the day, we truly believe the fiduciary duty if somebody hires us to sell is we're going to get you the best price possible, and we're working for you, and here's how we're going to tackle this and approach this, and if it doesn't work, here's plan B, here's plan C, and just coming in with a methodical plan that has been proven to work. If you're a buyer, our fiduciary duty is to you to go find the best deal out there. So we're going to work to look at every deal you're looking at and make sure your assumptions are right. If we think you're wrong, we're going to tell you, not just, this is where we're different, because I want to manage this property, right? So
Mhm.
if my buyer wants to buy a building and I'm going to want to manage it for him. I don't want him to buy something just so I can get a commission. I got to buy it knowing that this is going to be a property that we have to maintain.
Yep.
And, essentially we got to make sure it's a good shape. So there's a lot of steps along the way. The ID period where you find the property, I think is probably the most challenging right now. That's where cold calling comes in. We were talking about that before this started, but as you
Yeah.
know, I mean, Nick, you were here, so you can share war stories. But at the end of the day, the value to a lot of investors today is finding them a property, right? Because if it's on the market and it's not sold, it's probably not a good deal.
Yep.
Most good deals are off market. You don't hear about them. And how do you get them? Through networking, through cold calling, all the things that when you were with us, you did so good at. I mean, you could do a whole podcast on cold calling and mentality and attitude and enthusiasm and all the things you need to do it. But, at the end of the day, it is a numbers game, and, you got to keep yourself accountable. But yeah, that's just the ID side. Then somebody gets a property under contract. Then you got to
And
make
what
sure.
size properties would you guys manage? So you're talking about the ID side. That obviously will play into it if you're going to manage it and be part of any renovation, right?
Yeah, we'll consider anything as small as a duplex up to, 350 apartments, the biggest apartment community you can think of. We just know there's different management structures for different size properties, and we can kind of tailor ourselves to each. Personally, right now, I try not to do a lot of small properties outside of the physical geographical area that we're in, because that requires us to have more of a centralized roving team.
Yeah.
And it's not cost effective to send somebody from a maintenance guy from Midtown to Platte City
Yeah.
to service something when, so the drive time alone, somebody's gonna have to pay for that. I
Yeah.
just not good for us to be doing smaller properties too far outside of our core, which is really the urban core of KC. But bigger properties we can kind of handle anywhere, because they can justify having on-site staff, which
Mhm.
you can work with remotely. And,
And with on-site staff, how do you guys play a part in that? Is it hiring?
yeah, they're essentially employees of the Tiehen Group with most likely their salaries getting reimbursed by the property. So the bigger the property, the more doors, the more rent, the bigger the budget. Also, the more work that has to be done. So
Yeah.
they can typically, a bigger property, 80 to 90 plus units, can justify a salaried position at the manager, leasing agent spot, and probably a salaried maintenance person, which ends up being a better operational expense for the property to do it that way versus hiring everything out, like a small property would with maintenance. So yeah, there's no exact science to it, but that's where we come in, and every single property is different. I mean, if I look at a building and it has an elevator and a pool and a lot of complicated mechanical systems, we're gonna underwrite that different than if I the same number of doors at a garden style community with no elevator, no pool, no amenities. There's just two different beasts. So you really gotta dive into each property, get into the details, the nitty gritty, and find out what's best. But that's what I think we're good at.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So if somebody is newer to real estate investment, or when you're talking about, obviously, I think you've already shown a high value in the thought and the experience of what to underwrite. But what underwriting, a property that you would be evaluating, what does that actually mean?
So underwriting is essentially just, you have money, right? So if an investor has money, you have options. You can put it in the stock market. You can put it in 401k, whatever, you name it. I can tell you what, different bonds and different rates are. We do keep an eye on other investment markets, but I'm not a stock market expert. But if
Yep.
you say I'm interested in real estate for whatever the reason is, it could be, you're in it for cash flow. There's people that invest in real estate to fix and flip and make a quick return. There's people that they need it for a tax write-off because there's certain tax benefits to real estate with depreciation and putting things in a trust, and there's so many benefits. But the most beautiful thing, I think we talked about this all the time, was this word called appreciation. That's one that's almost impossible to predict. It's like saying, it's like if anybody tells me what their property's worth a year from now, I just usually brush them off. I'm like, you have no idea, because the market dictates this, right? Interest rates dictate this, buyer demand, supply demand, So anybody that tries to fool you with, here's what your property is going to be worth a year from now, 5 years from now, come on. Yes, you should do some analytics to hope and see what it could be, but you should never count on appreciation. So we typically tell investors, don't count on your property value going up. That's our goal. That's the most beautiful thing about real estate, is that some people can buy a house, sit on it for a year, and make a lot of money by doing nothing because the market changes. So, but if you take that out of the equation and just realize that's a possible benefit, it could also be, if you're in a bubble market like LA or East Coast, West Coast, it could also be a bad thing, right? You could buy at the top and now it bubble burst and an $800,000 property is worth 500. Luckily here locally, we don't really see that. Kansas City is not going to be a huge swing up or down either way. We know our market, we know the real estate, we know the submarkets, the neighborhoods, the pockets of KC to help people there. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, that's why people use us, is so we can give them that advice and guide them along. And but to answer your full question sorry to ramble, but to answer the question on what is a pro forma, what is underwriting, it's our way of showing you real numbers, as real as possible for the property. So it does require, you have to dig a little bit. You got to find what the current rents are. You got to look at what the market rents are. So what are comparable properties? You got to look at what are the current expenses. Are these expenses real? Are they hiring the right people, doing the right things? You got to you dig into taxes and insurance and all these different expenses that go along. All that goes into a spreadsheet. At the end of the day, I'm going to invest X dollars, and here's the income, here's the expense, here's my NOI. And then you get down to, okay, well, what kind of return am I looking at? Like a year ago, you could put all your money into a CD at US Bank and get 5% return guaranteed, no risk, other than you can't touch it for a year or whatever. That's a pretty good return for some people, right? But if you can show real estate and maybe you can show a cash flow and show a return of 10%, 15%, 30%, whatever it might be, yes, there's some inherent risks, unlike the CD, but there's also some benefits you'll never get out of a CD, right? The upside is so much bigger. Not everybody has an appetite for investing in real estate. And I love talking to those people because I like to challenge why they don't. And it's something I know. So I really like to understand it. And some people just have better options, right? But I always like to understand, what is your investment strategy? Every real estate investor, every investor for anything is just slightly different on what they're looking for. And sometimes I'll find out right away that we're not a good fit for you because you think year one, you're going to get a 20% return on your money. I'm sorry, but I don't see a path forward for that. Maybe we're not the best company for you to work with, right? There's just no way this is going to happen. Sorry. But others that are more realistic and can understand the numbers, and we can really help people with that. And that's essentially what underwriting is for real estate, is just deciding, is this a good investment? Taking all the information you possibly can prior to closing. Due diligence is the period where you inspect your property. And that's a big period too. Sometimes you don't have much time, so you gotta go with as much information as you have. But the more time you have to analyze a property and dig in and find out what's going on with it, eliminate potential surprises. That's what we tell people. That's what you should do.
And so from that point, as you're creating these projections and possible upside scenarios, is that when you're also able to come in and help with renovation or some type of construction?
Yeah. And we may not be the best fit, but at least we have enough data now from doing it over the years that we can tell people, here's what it should cost. Okay. Yeah. Here's what something, and if you were to hire us, here's what we would charge. And so absolutely. That's why I think we're a little bit different than a bigger brokerage or some of these other brokerage shops that just do one thing, because we do buying and selling and we do management and we do maintenance and renovation. We truly feel like we can provide a clear picture of what something's going to be and what it's going to cost. And I'm not saying others don't do that. I'm just saying a lot of places don't. They focus on one area. And
Yep.
we try and focus on all three.
That's awesome, man. Well, Mike, how could anybody that hears this podcast find you and connect with the Tiehen Group?
Oh, I mean, just Google. Yeah, I mean, we're open to talking to people. Look, I get calls all the time. People just want advice, and sometimes it is like, hey, if you're buying a property out here in up in Liberty, here's who I would call. I always try and leave somebody with some value. Like, hey, I'm sorry, I might not be able to help you, but you can talk to so and so, and I don't mind talking to anybody. So yeah, people can find us. They can look us up. I mean, I don't think we hide our numbers or anything. So yeah, we're out there. But tiehengroup.com. I appreciate the plug too, Nick. But yeah, we're always open, always available. Kind of open door policy here.
Awesome. Well, Mike, any words of wisdom for anybody listening to wrap up?
I mean, things that have been pounded into me and we've touched on. I mean, I would say, always learn. Like, don't ever, you never know it all. Like, and if you do, you get the wrong mindset. So, always be willing to learn and be willing to change. I would say too, like, take risks. Don't be afraid of change. You got to evolve. I mean, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and it's not working, change, right? But a lot of people are afraid that they think it's risky, but I would just say, look, take the risk. I mean, I've never, regretted a risk because even when it's gone bad, I've learned something. So it's kind of all tied together there. But one thing I would say I've learned from you with working with you is like, try and bring positivity and enthusiasm every day. You were like the king of that, the ball. I mean, the energy that flows through you when you walk through the door. I mean, we still talk about it. We wish you were here. We miss you so much, but that's important. I mean, you kind of radiate that and it's infectious. So I try to do that. It's not always easy. It doesn't come as natural as you, but I think I always try and remember, be like Nick Termini. Be like Nick Termini today.
Mike, thanks for being on the Business Growth Journey podcast. I can't think of a better way to close than that.
Yep, I agree, buddy. Hey, great talking to you. Thanks for having me.